We're on page Kuf Daled, opposite of page 206. Yes. We began Iggeres HaKodesh Siman Gimel last time.
Yes.
We took a week break. Whenever we take a week break, it's a little more difficult to
get started,
get back into the flow. So let's recap where we are.
Yeah.
So this letter is a letter about tzedakah. The effect and impact of tzedakah. And the Alter Rebbe begins with a pasuk from Yeshaya, Vayilbash tzedakah kisiryon v'koiva Yeshua bereishe, which literally means that Hashem wears tzedakah like a coat of armor, and he has a helmet made up of Yeshua, of salvation, on his head. The Chazal tell us, what is the connection between tzedakah and armor? So just like armor is made up of many, many different links, and
it's a chain.
It's made out of chain, and
you can move around.
Right, and it's covered with many, many different links. The same thing is also, and every single one of these little metal links on its own doesn't offer very great deal of protection. But when you have an entire coat of armor made up of all these links, so then you're protected. The same thing is also when it comes to tzedakah, called pruta mitztarefes l'chesh ben gadol. Every single coin adds up to this protective coat of armor. That's what Chazal tell us. But we're going to try to understand this a little more in a deeper way, according to Chassidus, the connection between tzedakah and armor, and specifically the kind of armor described, which is this coat of armor. Also, we have to understand the koiva Yeshua bereishe, what is this helmet of Yeshua on his head. But to understand this, we need to first understand the difference between tzedakah and all other mitzvahs. And that is that we know that tzedakah in certain ways is the greatest of all mitzvahs, and one of the ways in which it's evident that tzedakah is so great is that of all mitzvahs in general, regarding mitzvahs, we say schar mitzvah b'hai al malaka. There is no in this world we are not able to receive reward for our mitzvahs. Tzedakah, on the other hand, is different, because we say about tzedakah that karen kayemes leilam haba, that even though the principle of the reward we enjoy in Elam Haba, but Peres, the dividends we have over here in this world. Now, just to clarify, that we look in the Torah and we see the Torah says that if we're amelim b'Torah, if we learn Torah properly and if we do mitzvahs properly, then we're promised many, many wonderful things. As the pasuk continues over there, "V'nasati gishmechem be'itam," we're promised to have rain in its proper time. Today, we look in the Torah and we see all the times that we're promised to have rain, and we don't get it. By us, the rain, when it rains, we're annoyed. Okay, it's an umbrella day. Oh, it's overcast. Look at that.
No sun.
No sun, right? If you realize that in times of past, when it rained, that was like the day that you got your paycheck. Like payday every other Friday, right? You get your paycheck.
Yeah.
So it's a simcha. When it rained, that was like the payday, because that meant that the crops are going to grow. And when you had a society that was a agrarian society based on agriculture, so rain really was behind everything. No pun intended. Behind all growth was the rain. So the Torah mentions numerous brachas for mitzvah performance, and not necessarily tzedakah. Again, as Rashi says, if we learn Torah, we get these rewards. And if we do mitzvahs. But the Rambam famously says, so the question obviously is, how do we reconcile that with schar mitzvah b'hai al malaka? When we have very clearly in the Torah on numerous occasions, again, first and foremost in HaKodesh and in Parshas Kisaveh, but on many occasions where the Torah tells us the wonderful things that will ensue if we do mitzvahs. How do we reconcile that with the opinion of Rabbi Yaakov that schar mitzvah b'hai al malaka? The Rambam explains that all the brachas, all the different brachas and all the abundance that's mentioned in the Torah, it's not reward for our mitzvahs. Reward for our mitzvahs is an Elam Haba. So what are all these different things that are mentioned in the Torah? It is what we call hasaras haminiyah. Meaning Hashem tells us, if you learn Torah, if you do mitzvahs, I'm going to make it easy for you. I'm going to make conditions perfect for you. You will have money, you'll have peace, and all the conditions necessary in order for you to be able to serve me properly. That's not the reward. It's not the reward at all. The reward is Ne'elam Haba. You can compare that to if you hire a a worker, right? Let's say you have a company, you have a lot of workers working. So yeah, as we mentioned earlier, so once a week or twice a week or once a month you give out paychecks. But that's not all you have to give out. You have to give out other things also. You have to make sure that there's coffee in the coffee room. And you have to make sure that the bathroom is stocked with toiletries. And you have to make sure that there's air conditioning and that there's heat and that there's a desk. And all of these things, these are not, that's not the reward that you're getting. That's not the paycheck that you're getting. These are things that you have to make conditions proper to allow the people to work. Right? Imagine you have a bunch of workers, and they're all lazy, good for nothings, they're not doing anything. So besides for the fact that you're not going to give them paychecks, and you might cut their paychecks, you're also going to say there's no coffee in the coffee room. Why should I be giving you coffee if you're not doing work, right?
Yeah, you're not getting it.
Okay? So the same thing is also the reward, the paycheck we get in Olam Haba. Schar mitzvah by halmaleka, the reward for the mitzvah we don't get. The Torah says that there will be wonderful conditions if we learn Torah, we do mitzvahs. That's nothing to do with that. That's the Eibishter Pasha managing the workplace in a way that if you do what you're supposed to do, so the Eibishter provides you with the conditions to make sure that you're able to do so and continue doing so. The exception to this rule, however, is tzedakah. When we say that we eat peiroseha ba'olam haza, that we eat the dividends we have here in this world, that means not only those things that are necessary what we call for hasaras hamaniyah, we actually get part of the reward for the mitzvah here in Olam Hazah. Why is tzedakah different than all other mitzvahs? That in other mitzvahs we say schar mitzvah b'al maleka, and in tzedakah we say that we get actually a part of the reward. I wouldn't say part of the reward, because the karen kayemes le'olam haba, the principle all remains for Olam Haba, but dividends. We get the dividends, we get some sort of the fruit we enjoy here in this world. That's what Dr. Rebbe is going to be explaining over here in this letter. In order to understand this, we first have to understand the function of mitzvahs in general. Once we understand the function of mitzvahs in general, then we'll be able to understand better the advantage of tzedakah. So if we wanted to back up and recap what we said so far today. We started off quoting the pasuk, Vayil bat tzedakah gesiryan. And we said that we have to understand what is this comparison of tzedakah to armor. Then we moved on, and the next thing we said is we have to understand what is the value, the special value of tzedakah, and which because of this value we say that tzedakah we get the reward here in this world. And to understand that we have to understand mitzvahs in general, which is where we're going to right now. Okay, so what are mitzvahs in general? So this is the conversation that we already started last week. We're in the middle of this conversation. There's a concept called l'shem yichud kuchabrichu u'shchinte. This is something that we've encountered in Tanya in the past, encountered in Perik Mem in Tanya. We encountered it again in Perik Mem Aleph in Tanya. The idea of yichud kuchabrichu u'shchinte, this is the purpose of our avodah here in this world, which is why there are certain communities where before every single mitzvah, or many mitzvahs, they say l'shem yichud kuchabrichu u'shchinte. According to the Nusach, which the Alter Rebbe established, we do it once a day before saying Baruch Shamar. That covers the entire day. But either way, it doesn't change the concept, the larger concept, which is that our purpose in the world is to do l'shem, is for the purpose of yichud kuchabrichu u'shchinte, is uniting kuchabrichu and the Shechina. Kuchabrichu largely is what we talk about, the oir of Seva Kol, the oir which transcends the light, the energy, which is transcends, which is above and beyond worlds. And then you have Shechinte. Shechinte is the limited light, which enters the worlds, which enters what we call the Seder Yishtalshalos, the system of worlds. And these are also known as Memala Kol Almin and Seva Kol Almin. Seva Kol Almin is the infinite light of Hashem, which transcends all worlds. And Memala Kol Almin is the light that enters the worlds. The limited light, the finite light which enters these worlds. Mitzvahs come straight from Seva Kol Almin. Mitzvahs are Hashem's ratzon. They are Hashem's essence. And that's why we don't really get mitzvahs. As opposed to limud HaTorah, Torah we understand. Mitzvahs is not about comprehension. Mitzvahs is about doing, bittul. Because ultimately what is a mitzvah? A mitzvah is Hashem's desire. It's Hashem himself. That is when I understand something, it's not necessarily me. It's something I heard from someone else. It's something that I can then later explain to you. It's not me. It's something that I've tapped into. My desire is me. And that's why sometimes I can desire something that doesn't even make sense. And I don't even understand why I want it. Sometimes you like something or you like someone, and you're like, why? Why do I like this? Why do I like that person so much? Okay, not that that thing is bad or that that person is bad. The thing is good and the person is good, but sometimes there's some sort of ratzon over there, some sort of desire, and it's higher than seichel. Ratzon is who you are. Hashem's ratzon, which is Him, which is the Soivu Kol Alman, that is the mitzvah. So when we're doing mitzvahs, we're tapping into Soivu Kol Alman. The reward for the mitzvah, we say schar mitzvah mitzvah. The reward of the mitzvah is the mitzvah. The reward for the mitzvah is that when we go up to Gan Eden, we actually get to enjoy
The mitzvah itself.
we get to enjoy that Soivu Kol Alman. Because I want to drop ahead of myself. When we do a mitzvah, we're accomplishing Yichud Kochabrichu U'Shchinte. We're actually bringing Hashem, the Oir of Soivu Kol Alman, into the Shechina, into the finite system of Seder Hishtalshlus. As Alter Rebbe explains over here, for those of you who say Pasach Aliyah, in Chabad we say Pasach Aliyah on Friday before Mincha. So there we talk about the Gufa of Hashem, the body. The body of Hashem is comprised of the 10 spheres: Chachma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvura, Teferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus. I'm sure many of you've seen a diagram where these are laid out corresponding to the anatomy of a human body, and it's called the Guf of Hashem. And then the Oir of Soivu Kol Alman is what's called a levush for that guf. It's a garment for that guf. Why is it called a garment? Because just like a garment surrounds, Soivu Kol Alman also, it surrounds, it transcends. When we do a mitzvah, we are bringing down a garment to the guf. We are bringing down the garment, which is Soivu Kol Alman, and covering the guf with it, which is the Mamala Kol Alman, the spheres of Hashem. And that is Yichud Kochabrichu U'Shchinte. That's what we're accomplishing when we're doing mitzvahs. In general, in Seder Hishtalshlus, there's only a finite amount of light and energy that comes in. When we do a mitzvah, we're drawing a certain amount of infinite energy into a certain amount, a distilled small amount of the infinite energy into Seder Hishtalshlus, and that becomes a lavush in Seder Hishtalshlus, a lavush to the gufam, a garment to the body. The reward for doing a mitzvah is that when a person goes up to Gan Eden after 120 years, so then he is able to bask in the radiance of that Oir Ein Sof, of that Soivu Kol Alman which you drew into the system through doing the mitzvah. Again, because a mitzvah is rooted and sourced in Soivu Kol Alman, you're drawing Soivu Kol Alman into the system when you're doing a mitzvah, and after 120 years, you're able to enjoy that now. Your neshama can't really take Soivu Kol Alman. It's too powerful for your neshama. So what has to happen is, from that levush, that Soivu Kol Alman which enters into the system when you do a mitzvah, a small amount of that, a small little ray of that levush, becomes a special protective levush for your neshama, so that your neshama in Gan Eden can be able to appreciate and enjoy the light of Soivu Kol Alman. And that's why it says in the Zohar that the mitzvahs we do in this world become a levush, the garment for the neshama in the next world. And the reason for that is because, again, the point of the next world is to enjoy somewhat of a ray of Soivu Kol Alman, and to be able to enjoy that ray, the neshama, it can't be exposed, fully exposed. It needs a garment. The garment is a distilled form of the Soivu Kol Alman itself. That's where we are. This is, I think, what we spoke about largely during last year. Let's do this inside.
You're starting.
Sorry?
Starting from the beginning.
We're going to start, no. We're going to start from... Let's start from Vayidei Kiyum HaMitzvos.
How many?
9 lines from the bottom, first words on the line. Page Kuv Dalet, opposite at page 206.
Vayidei Kiyum HaMitzvos.
Vayidei Kiyum HaMitzvos, to the observance of mitzvahs, Nimshach Oir Makif Hanal. We get a ray from the encompassing light, the higher light, the infinite light mentioned earlier. Umeir toicha eser sfiris the atzilus bria yitzira asiya. That infinite light. When we do a mitzvah, we cause the infinite light to shine in the system of worlds, of the four worlds. Umisyached im ha'ir pnimi. The infinite light unites with the finite light. V'nikra yichud kochebrichu v'shchinte. This is called yichud kochebrichu v'shchinte. Commission is makam acher, as explained elsewhere. Ha'ara de ha'ara ma'ir makif hanal. So we have, when you do a mitzvah, you're drawing a ha'ara, a ray of the air makif into the system. A ray from that ray, Aidetzim Rav, undergoes a tremendous contraction, and Nasa Levush, that becomes a garment, Lebechines Nefesh Ruach Neshama Shala Adam Began Eden Hatachtan Ve'elyon. It becomes a garment for the neshama of the person in the higher level of Gan Eden, the lower level of Gan Eden. This way, the neshama is able to take pleasure from and to be able to grasp some sort of grasp of the light Ma'ir and Seif Baruch Hu from the infinite light of Hashem, Commissioner Zbar Makam Acher, as explained elsewhere. V'zeu Shamar Razal, and this is what our Chazal tell us: Char mitzvah b'hai al maleka. That in this world there is no reward for the mitzvahs. Why? Why can't we get reward for mitzvahs in this world? Because in this lowly physical world, this world, which is so limited, and the light here is so contracted, and the light is extremely diluted and contracted, it is impossible for there to be over here any ray whatsoever of the Eir Sof. Here in this world we can only benefit from the finite light, which comes from the Yud Sfiris, which are called the Gufa in the Zohar. As we mentioned, the Yud Sfiris, there's the garment, and then there's the body. The body is the Yud Sfiris. Why is it called the Guf? Chesed Yamina Chulu, Chesed is the right arm, etc. Ki lefi, because shekamoi she'ein areich leila guf. Why is it called the body? Shekamoi she'ein areich leila guf hagashmi legabi neshama. Just like there's no comparison whatsoever between the body and the soul and the neshama. Kach, the same thing. Ein areich klal. There's no comparison whatsoever. Liyut sfiris d'Atzilus, the 10 spheres of Atzilus. Legabi hamatzil ha'elyon and Seif Baruch Hu, relative to the infinite light of Hashem, which is the emanator of all the light. Ki afilu chachma yila, because even chachma shirei shisang, which is the highest of all of the spheres, the highest part of the guf, ki bebechines asiya gufness is compared to like physical action, lagabi ein Seif Baruch Hu, relative to the infinite light of Hashem. Commission is explained in L'Kutei Amarim. So Alter Rebbe is pointing out something interesting. We don't say ein HaKodesh Baruch Hu noisen schar ba'olam haza. We don't say Hashem doesn't give reward in this world. It's not like Hashem is looking saying, you're still in this world? No, you don't get the reward. Next world, there I'll give you the reward. No. Schar mitzvah al maleka, the words are, in this world there is no reward for mitzvahs. Why is that? Because it's impossible. If the reward for a mitzvah is the ability to be able to enjoy some of the infinite light of Hashem through that garment that you have, in this world, there is zero revelation of the infinite light of Hashem. We're too lowly. It's impossible. So it's not that Hashem says, I'm delaying your reward till the next world, for whatever reason, purpose. It's just an impossibility. Again, if the idea of schar mitzvah is that you're enjoying and appreciating something, somewhat, a ray of the Eir Sof which you caused doing the mitzvahs, in this world that's an impossibility.
If that's true though, how is it possible for somebody to deplete his schusim? People worry all the time that their schusim are depleted because of certain things that they were given. So if there's no schar, how do they deplete it?
That's a good question. You're saying if anyways you don't get schar in this world, what does it mean that the schuyas were nismite? That's a good question.
So
yeah.
Each time we do a mitzvah, we create more light.
We're bringing infinite light. So, see, we have to understand. Ultimately, our goal isn't Gan Eden. This is something we're going to talk about later on in Siman Yud Zayin. Our goal is Mashiach. When Mashiach comes, we're going to be here in Olam Haza, and we're going to enjoy the Gili of Seva Kalaman, and not like the Neshama enjoys the Gili of Seva Kalaman in Gan Eden. Because in Gan Eden, you get only a ha'ara. You get only a ray from the Seva Kalaman. We're going to, so what we're doing right now, the primary reward isn't Gan Eden. Now, there's 3 stages. There's here in this world. Here in this world, we get nothing. Right now, here in Olam Haza, before Mashiach comes, we do mitzvahs, we get nothing. The neshama goes up to higher world. Once the neshama graduated to a spiritual world, so over there already, it can enjoy a tiny little limited form of, as there is the yichud koshebrichu shchinte, as the Seva Kalaman unites with the Mamala Kalaman, and if the neshama has this garment, and therefore it can appreciate something. Our ultimate goal is when Mashiach comes. When here in Olam Hazai Gashmi, in our bodies, we're experiencing Seva Kalaman in its fullest form, which is a mind-blowing concept. That's that we're going to talk about in Mitzvah Shem in a later simon. But right now, here, 1 second, I'll get back to you. We're talking later simon. But right now, we're talking about over here the difference between our world and the next world. Yeah.
So the thing is that the only way we have Bechir Chavshis in general is if we do more mitzvahs now, the aura gets bigger, and so when it comes the end of the year, the new year, and a new light comes down, right? It's bigger because we had Bechir Chavshis to do more mitzvahs and to allow that light to be bigger.
I think you're mixing up concepts.
Yeah.
That you're talking about what we learned earlier, what later Al Rebbe talks about in Siman Yud Daled, about every single year in Rosh Hashanah, new light coming into this world. He's not talking about New Year's, by the way.
That's not
What I'm saying is
You're mixing up the years.
regardless, we by doing as many mitzvahs as we can, we create that light should be bigger eventually.
I don't know if that's connected. That light, the fact that there's more light each year is not related to our mitzvahs.
So what changed when Mashiach comes? The world is finite.
Reuven, you asked me the question once. I answered you once. We're going to answer that later on in Siman Yud Zayin. But you're not happy. You're going to have to go over the coming week and pull out a Tanya, Iggeres HaKodesh, Siman Yud Zayin, and harav on it and figure it out.
Yud Zayin.
Yeah, that's what Al Rebbe talks about it. Okay? Good. No, it's a wonderful midah. You're not happy with me telling you that I'm not explaining it to you now.
No, I don't understand it.
I get that.
What changed? Mashiach comes. What are you going to see?
Right. At that time,
the world is finite, and then.
Right. Good question. But right now, that was Reuven.
This is infinite.
Reuven, that was a side point. By the way, if you want to look at it, you can look at it in Siman Yud Zayin. Another place, if you want to read up on this, is in Derech Mitzvah Mitzvahs Tzitzis. The Tzemach Tzedek is a Sefer Derech Mitzvah Tzitzis. He talks about it at length also, this concept. Or you can wait till we get to Siman Yud Zayin. But that's not the topic for today. Today we're not talking about Mashiach. I just mentioned that as a side, as an aside, that the main reward talk is not even Gan Eden. But this letter is about Olam Haza versus Gan Eden. Here in our lowly physical world, limited world, and the spiritual level we're on, it's impossible for us to experience any of the reward of a mitzvah. Schar mitzvah b'hal maleka, which goes back to what we're saying. That what? That we get rain and that's not the reward. That's not the reward for mitzvah is the gili of air and suf, right? Not rain. Rain might be wonderful. Your paycheck might be wonderful. That's the coffee in the coffee room. That what we got. The main reward of a mitzvah, which is the gili of the air and suf, we don't have in this world because we're too low for that. I do want to point out, it's not an issue of space and time. When we talk about Elam Haba, when we talk about Gan Eden is a level. For those who were here, back when we were already learning in Tanya and Perek Lamed Ches and Perek Lamed Tes, mainly Perek Lamed Tes, we know that there's Gan Eden Elyon as Olam Habriya, Gan Eden HaTachton as Olam HaYitzira. Now, theoretically, if there's a person here in this world who's on the level of Olam Habriya or on the level of Olam HaYitzira, and by the way, that taka happens, we have great tzaddikim or even on the level of Olam Atzilus while here in this world. So they can experience this while in this world also. They're on the level of Gan Eden. It's not a time consideration. It's not about, as long as the neshama is in the guf. It is for the vast majority of people who are Bahai Alma, they live in this world, they can't experience it. There are some special people that even during when the neshamas are in these bodies, they're not really in this world. They're on a higher level entirely. They're on the spiritual level, the spiritual consciousness of the world of Bria or the world of Yitzira. Regarding them, the pasuk says, "Elamcha tira b'chayecha." Right? It says by the Ovis, right? The Gemara says, I believe in Baba Basra, right? The Gemara says that Shloisha Itimana Kadosh Baruch Hu Me'en Elam Haba. The Ovis over here in this world, they had Gan Eden. Elamcha tira b'chayecha. Here in this life, they had Gan Eden. What does that mean? That means that here in this world, they were at the Madriga of Gan Eden. Gan Eden is a spiritual level. As long as we're not on the level of Gan Eden, we can't experience any of the revelation of the Eir Ein Sof. And that's why Schar Mitzvahs by Al Maleka. But tzedakah is different. Tzedakah, somehow or other, we're getting reward here in this world.
For instance, for example, what kind of reward you talking?
We're going to have to find out. But that's what Chazal say, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying.
So obviously, in other words, even though in general we say Schar Mitzvah Al Maleka, and we just finished explaining why it is that there is no what?
Aser b'shul tisasher.
Aser b'shul tisasher, right? And in general, again, we say these are things that we have Peiros Seha Be'elam Haza, right? Inside the Ilazois, and therefore 5 lines from the top of page 208. And therefore, when it comes to tzedakah and gemilas chasadim, regarding which Chazal tell us that we enjoy the dividends here in this world. What is the reason? Yesh nikavim al derech mashal. There are holes, bilavusha elyin, in the garment. Remember, we said every time we do a mitzvah, we're bringing a garment onto the guf. The guf is the mamal kalaman, the garment is sev kalaman. There are holes in the garment. Hamakif al gufa, which surrounds the body. Hey makelim the yutzviris, the body is the kelim of the yutzviris. Lahoyer mahem, and through these holes we have light. Ulahashpia oir v'shefa, and we get light, and we get abundance. Mechesed yemina, we get from Hashem's chesed, which is the right hand, from the gufa, which is oirech yamim be'elam haza, long life in this world, hagashmi ve'oisher ve'kovid, and wealth and honor medrei smala from the left hand, v'chein teferes, and the same thing is we get from teferes and v'hoid v'hodar v'chedva v'chulu, and all the other midas also. And now we're beginning to have a deeper understanding in why tzedakah is called a Syrian, why tzedakah is called a coat of armor. Because a coat of armor is, on the one hand, it's a garment, but on the other hand, it's made up, it's comprised of many, many, many different holes. And that is because in tzedakah, when it comes to tzedakah, actually, some of the light shines through the garment and shines down here into this world, and we're able to get from tzedakah. Therefore, you ask what the reward is. Oisher, what do you say over here? Eirich yamim b'yimina, right? Oisher v'chavet b'smoila, and all the other midas. So tzedakah is the exception. Tzedakah, there are holes in the tzedakah, and that's why when it comes to tzedakah, we actually experience in this world, we experience the brachas. Now, we need to understand the statement a little better. Why? Okay, the Alter Rebbe is making a statement, which is, again, it's consistent with Chazal. Yeah. We know that tzedakah we get the reward. It's also consistent, now we understand the idea of the armor, because we understand every single mitzvah is about a garment over the body. Tzedakah is armor over the body, because there are little holes allowing the light to shine through in this world. But why? Why is tzedakah different than all the other mitzvahs? And the answer to that question is, if we go back, let's talk again, we said before that mitzvahs are soiva klaman, meaning it's Hashem's ratzon that transcends us. We don't get mitzvahs. We don't get mitzvahs. What do I mean we don't get mitzvahs? That means when you shake a lulav, you make kiddush, you eat matzah, you eat kosher. What is the benefit in this world from it? There is no benefit. There is no benefit. There is no joy. If you have joy in a mitzvah, it's not because you get the benefit of that mitzvah, it's because you have a joy in serving Hashem. The joy of a servant serving his master. Because it is Hashem's ratzon which completely transcends us. And that's why schar mitzvah b'hal maleka. What it means is, if the reward of a mitzvah is the appreciation of the mitzvah, we don't appreciate mitzvahs in this world. Because mitzvahs are beyond us. When we go up to Gan Eden, there we can enjoy it a little. There we can have a little of appreciation of Hashem's mitzvahs. And that's what it means that the reward that we receive in Elam Haba is appreciating a little of the light of the mitzvahs. But here in this world, we don't appreciate the mitzvahs. But there is one mitzvah which we do appreciate in this world, and that is tzedakah. Tzedakah is a mitzvah whose benefit, forget about the reward you get from above, whose benefit is readily and very clearly apparent in this world. You give tzedakah, and with the benefits of tzedakah, if there wouldn't be tzedakah in society, right, people would be miserable.
Because you're doing Ahavas Yisrael and you're...
There we go. So what does that tell us?
You're giving...
Yeah, but even forgetting about the mitzvah, there's a joy again in doing a mitzvah and serving Hashem. What does that tell you about the nature of the mitzvah? That tells you that somehow, some way, in this, every mitzvah has the oir of Hashem Seva Kalaman, but in every mitzvah, the oir of Hashem Seva Kalaman, the benefit of it is completely beyond us. It completely eludes us. There is one mitzvah which somehow or other the oir filters through the holes and comes down here into this world, that even in this world we can appreciate that mitzvah also. And that's why we get the reward in this world, because the light enters the world, so the reward enters the world. In all the other mitzvahs, the light doesn't enter this world. Does it really enter the world? Yeah, when Mashiach comes, we'll appreciate it. But it doesn't come into the world in a way that we appreciate it. We don't appreciate the light of shaking a lulav. And that's why we can't get the reward in this world, because if the light doesn't enter, the reward doesn't enter. Because what is the reward? The reward is the basking in the light. Tzedakah, the light enters this world, and that's why we also can get some of the reward. Now, the main reward is still in Elam Haba. The main reward, Karen, is the actual experience of the Seva Kalaman in its full glory, which that we'll only get in Elam Haba. But the peiros, a small little dividends that we get over here in this world also.
So why tzedakah though? What's the significance of tzedakah as opposed to other?
I don't know the reason why, but we see as a fact that tzedakah is different than every other mitzvah, that the oir of the mitzvah shines in this world. We see that. And if the oir can shine in this world, then we get the reward in this world also. All the other mitzvahs, the oir doesn't shine in this world, so therefore we don't get we can't get the reward.
Tzedakah shines in this world.
The benefit of tzedakah, even goyim also give tzedakah. Goyim, you don't see goyim on sukkahs running around shaking lulavs in the street.
No, not really.
Right? But goyim give tzedakah. Why? Because it's a mitzvah whose benefit has entered out, even though it's the oir of Seva Kalaman. You would think Seva Kalaman is too high. It's a mitzvah. Mitzvah by definition of Seva Kalaman. How is it that the benefit of tzedakah we appreciate if it's Seva Kalaman is too high? Somehow or other, there are these holes. We appreciate it.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't it? Doesn't it say in Tanya that the reason that the tzedakah is because we actually went and we earned the money, and then we did something, and then from that we were able to give something away to do a second mitzvah, like mitzvah Iggeres mitzvah. You know?
What? Again, start to your question. Isn't what? Isn't
why is tzedakah different than other?
Tzedakah can be different from other mitzvahs in many ways, and that's what's talked about in another. In Perek Lamed Zayin, it's Lamed Zayin says what you're saying.
No, the differentiation. That's one.
Again, tzedakah can be different in many different ways. One of the ways in which it is different, Alter Rebbe talks about in Perek Lamed Zayin, which is why tzedakah has a bigger impact in Dir B'Tachtayim, is what you mentioned. Here, we're not talking. We're talking about a totally different difference. It doesn't have to be one or the other. There can be many different special qualities to a particular mitzvah. However, holding by the colon, here we have a worry. This lofty light which is coming down to this world through tzedakah, we're worried, what if the klippas got their hands on it?
What do you mean?
Because we're unleashing into the system a light which the worlds aren't used to getting. Through tzedakah, specifically into our world. How do we prevent the klippas from taking control of it? The same thing over here, to protect the person, to protect him from anything bad. We know, as the pasuk says, Hashem, when after Hashem blesses you, v'yishmerecha. Right? Because a gift Sometimes a gift can be abused also. So we have this gift that's been given, the special gift of the special light that's coming through tzedakah. How do we protect it against misuse and abuse, and it shouldn't come back to bite us, and the klippa shouldn't get a hold of it? Therefore, therefore, once again, the oir of makif once again illuminates v'soisim hanekev al derech mashal, and covers up the hole. And that's why in the armor every single hole is covered up. In other words, if tzedakah is all about the holes, why are the holes covered by these little links? It's covered up so that only the light should only come to its intended recipient, the one who gave tzedakah. It's covered up so the klippa should not be able to get a hold of any of that oir. Talk about every aspect of the mashal is precise. Because that light is Ein Sof and Sof Kol Almin, Keniska Le'el is mentioned earlier, and therefore it has the ability not only to give in an unlimited way, but also to block it from going to any recipients that aren't deserving of it. And this is what Chazal tell us, that when you give a lot of tzedakah, it has a cheshbon gadol. Cheshbon gadol are two opposites. Cheshbon means a limit, right? Cheshbon is an account. Gadol implies bigger and bigger, which is infinite. Ki gadol Hashem muhul ma'oid b'lisayf atachlis gvul. Yes, Hashem is very great, but at the same time, also there's a cheshbon of who it goes to and who it doesn't go to, and it goes to the yid who gives tzedakah, but that light does not go to the klippas. The higher the light, the greater the damage if it goes to the wrong place, and also the greater the possibility that it might go to the wrong place, because the higher the light, it doesn't really differentiate between deserving and undeserving, because it's removed. So we have to have a special covering up of the holes to make sure that the light comes only to us.
So how do you make sure that stuff is being used properly and
separate conversation. That's not that. Right here,
we're not talking about this.
No, here we're talking about that. The light that you get for giving tzedakah and the reward you get should come to you only, and the klippa should not get any hold of it.
How would the klippa get hold of it? And who is the klippa?
There's
the guy who's not deserving to getting that stuff he's the klippa.
Yeah, and also, by the way, they're very practical.
That's why
what stops you when you get, going back to what we learned about in last simon, when you get the wealth, and when you get the covet, and when you get the long life, what stops you from becoming arrogant? If that would be klippa getting a hold of it, right? That example right there. What? Hashem has to bless you, v'yishmerecha, and guard you that it should go to holy places, not to klippa places. Now, something which we've spoken about many times is that in Chassidus, particularly in general, and particularly Chassidus Chabad, we're not into reward. The simplest thing that the Rebbe could have told Chassidim: give money, you'll get back money. There's something deeper going on over here. In Chabad, we live in this world, not in the next world. We live to serve the Eibishter. So what's this whole talk about reward? You notice the Alter Rebbe over here, again, I think we mentioned this in the past, it's not like, how many fundraising letters do you get a year? You open it up. These kids, the orphans, and they're freezing cold, and they have no heat, and they're hungry, and please help, right? The Alter Rebbe doesn't write these letters. He's writing deep letters to Chassidim, who to them, they want to appreciate, and it's not about reward. Yeah, the fact that tzedakah, we get the reward in this world is amazing, but the point isn't that. The point is a deeper point. Why do we get the reward in this world? Because tzedakah is the only mitzvah where you can feel the Eir Ein Sof here in this world, Bisman HaGalos, before Mashiach comes. For every other mitzvah, the Eir Ein Sof, you can only get either in Gan Eden or ultimately when Mashiach comes. If you treasure Kirvas Alikim, if you treasure closeness to Hashem, and you want to feel closeness to Hashem, tzedakah is the way to go. That's the mitzvah where the oir of Soiva Kalalman can be actually felt and appreciated and present in this world. The reward that we're getting is a result of that. So the Alter Rebbe wasn't expecting his Chassidim to jump at the opportunity to give tzedakah because they can get reward. It was the deeper idea behind it. You should understand the reason why you're getting reward is because the Soiva Kalalman filters down into this world. For Chassidim, that was the incentive. We spoke about it also in last simon, right? About appreciating the love as opposed to the gift. when you get a gift, realize it's not about the gift. It's about the love. There's certain people, they look at a gift and they appreciate the gift. And deeper people realize that it's so more, right? What's behind it? And by the way, if someone wants to give you a gift, maybe you don't need the gift. Maybe you don't want it. Maybe it makes you uncomfortable. So you say you decline it. But what if you realize the gift isn't the gift? The gift is only a vehicle for the love. Do you want the love? That's what it is, right? The same thing is also over here, realizing that the gift, which is the reward that we're getting in this world, is a vehicle for the Eir and Sof, is a vehicle for the closeness and the love, and that's really what is so attractive and enticing to the Chassidim. There's an interesting, it's somewhat of a connection to this parsha, and that is that we have, at the end of this week's parsha, Yaakov instructs regarding his burial. And it says, the pasuk says, "Vayisu oisei banav Cain kasher tzivam," that his sons carried the Aron, as he commanded. What as he commanded? So Rashi says that he commanded only my sons should carry me, not my grandsons, because my grandsons are bibnois Canaanim. They had goyish mothers. So I don't want them carrying my body. That's what Yaakov Avinu said. So that's why he wanted only his sons to carry his coffin. Now, the truth is, if we look earlier on in Parshas Vayeshev, on the pasuk where it says, "Vayikumu kol banav v'chol benosav l'nachmei," that Yaakov's sons and daughters rose up to comfort him. So there, Rashi brings actually two opinions. One opinion, Taka, is that Yaakov's sons all married Canaanim. The other opinion is that they married their twin sisters. Over here, Rashi doesn't mention this whole idea of twin sisters. Here in this, over here in our parsha, Rashi only mentions, and what's obvious is, the Rebbe talks about this in a Sikha, what's obvious is that according to the opinion that the Shvatim, this is Rabbi Nechemiah, according to Rabbi Nechemiah, who's of the opinion that the Shvatim married their daughters, so according to that opinion, it wasn't an issue. The grandsons also were able to carry the mita, able to carry the casket. Oh, it's according to Rabbi Yehuda, who was of the opinion that the Shvatim married Kenainim, so the Yaakov didn't want his grandsons carrying him. But according to the opinion that they married their sisters, their twins, so they weren't Kenainim, so therefore Yaakov didn't have any objection to that.
What about the Bnei Zilpah and...
Sorry?
What about the Bnei Zilpah and Bilhah? They were also... their mothers weren't...
They weren't Kenainim?
They weren't Canaanim, but
they were Megayer. They weren't Canaanim. Okay, this is really a huge topic amongst the Mefarshim. What does the word Canaanim mean? Is it literally? But that's not where we're going right now. The bigger issue is, and Yaakov had no problem with the grandsons that were born out of a relationship which in a few hundred years the Torah would declare as incestuous, that they should carry him. Why is that not a problem? And Bechal, how did the Shvatim marry their sisters?
Who was the shadchan?
Think about it. Think about it. All Bnei Yisrael, for all the generations, according to one opinion, we are the progeny of unions between brothers and sisters.
where did we find that they had sisters? The only daughter of Yaakov was Dinah.
So according to this day, every Shevet was born with a twin sister.
Opinions.
Rashi brings it down, Parshas Vayeshev.
Is that why Gesher comes from the father's side?
So, there's a fascinating mimer from the Tzemach Tzedek, also in Derech Mitzvah, based on a mimer from the Alter Rebbe printed in the Siddur, who says something interesting. He says, we have to understand this whole business of arayos. Why did the Torah? Why is brother not allowed to marry a sister? Why is a father not allowed to marry a daughter? Son not allowed to marry the mother? What's the reason for all this? Interestingly, the Ramban in Parshas Achrei, he declares it all to be a choik. He said it doesn't make sense. It's Iggeres HaMelech. Ramban says that. Ramban, in you might want to say unpolitically correct language, it wouldn't be very popular today. He says, actually, logically speaking, there is no better shidduch than a brother and a sister. Father should marry off a son to his daughter, and this way they both inherit his wealth. And think about it, brothers and sisters. If brothers married sisters, the divorce rate would be much lower.
Yeah.
They come from the same background, the same, right? The same, somewhat similar temperaments. Anyone here has a sibling, you share a certain relationship with your sibling which you don't share with your spouse. It's not saying nothing against spouses, there's certain closeness. So, but why is it disallowed? The Ramban said it's Iggeres HaKodesh, Iggeres HaMelech. But why Taka? Why Taka? And what's interesting is that if you look in Kabbalah, the whole system, the whole spiritual system of Seder Shtalshalos is all based on spiritually incestuous relationships. Meaning?
Spiritually?
Yeah, I'll explain to you what I mean. We're trying to make L'Shem Yichud Kuchabrichu U'Shchinte. Now you look in Kabbalah, what is Kuchabrichu U'Shchinte? Kuchabrichu U'Shchinte is Zun, Zachar and Nekeva, which is Za and Malchus. The six spheres is the Kuchabrichu, and the Shchinte is Malchus. So we're trying to make the union of the male and the female, which is the six midas on one side and the Malchus. However, these two are brother and sister.
That's illegal.
They're brother and sister. In fact, we see this Basi Legani, Achoisi Kala, and that's in spiritual terms. It means my sister and my Kala, because Za and Malchus, they're siblings. Their father is Chachma, the mother is Bina, the siblings, and our whole purpose in Torah Mitzvahs is to bring about a union between Za and Malchus, and they're related to each other. They're brother and sister. And then it's not only that, every single one of the incestuous relationships that is forbidden is actually spiritually something we do. The Tzemach Tzedek brings down, he says, the word Shema is Shem Ayin. I'm not getting into the whole Kabbalah behind it. Shem is Malchus. We actually had this in Sharich V'Amunah. We talked about how Shem is associated with Malchus. Now Malchus, remember, is the daughter, right? And Ayin in Kabbalah is the Zayin Tachtoin, is the Abba, without getting too much into it, is an element of Chachma. So here we have father-daughter relationship. And then you continue further on in the Pasuk, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Echad is Ach, brother. Dalid, which is a reference to Bina, for reasons we're not going to get into right now, but Bina is Dalid. So we have, that's father, that's mother and son. Bina and the Bina and the brother, which is his brother and son. And now if you realize if the son and daughter are married to each other, okay, so then when the son has a relationship with his mother, it's also his mother-in-law. The daughter with the father is also a father-in-law. That's another set of arayos mentioned in the Torah, right? We'll take questions soon. Let me finish, we'll take questions soon. So how is it that all these relationships that in the Torah are considered to be asur, actually these are things that are happening in the spiritual realms at not only are they happening, but we're instigating through our mitzvahs, we're inducing them. Every time we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, we're causing a yichud. In Shema, we're causing a yichud of Bina and of Chachma and Malchus. And we say Echad, we're causing a yichud of Bina and Za. So the Tzemach Tzedek explains that in fact, whenever we have the yichud of a zachar and a nekeva in the spiritual realms, take for example Kuchabrichu U'Shchinte, we're talking about uniting a light which is infinite and bringing it down into finite vessels. The male is the mashpia, and the ultimate mashpia is an infinite mashpia, and bringing it down into, which is really what we're talking about over here in this perek, the idea of bringing together the levush with the gufa. So the gufa is the finite light. The finite light has to be able to handle somewhat the infinite light. If and when the finite light can handle its unity with the infinite light, that's amazing. That's wonderful. That's really what we're talking about over here in this perek. When we do a mitzvah, we're bringing the finite light into the infinite. We're bringing the infinite light into the finite light. We're causing a yichud of Kuchabrichu and Shchinte. And that's the yisoid and the purpose and the tachlis of Kol HaTorah Kula. But as we mentioned over here in this perek, in Olam Haza Hagashmi, in this physical world, we can't handle infinite light. So this whole system, which happens in the higher worlds, we can't replicate it over here in this world because we're not holy enough to be able to replicate it. And that's why over here it's forbidden. Because if we can't handle it, there always becomes The danger, what we spoke about also over here, that actually that infinite light can actually end up in the hands of Klippa if the Makabel can't handle it. So all of these incredibly holy and high unities which occur in the spiritual worlds, we can't do them because over here would only cause a shvira, would cause a breaking of the vessels, and that light would go to Klippa. That's after Matan Torah. Because Torah achas l'kulam, after Matan Torah, we know that there's one Torah that applies to all of Klal Yisrael, and we can't make a differentiation, and we can't say if you're a big tzaddik, there's one rule for you, and for the rest of the people, there's another rule. But before Matan Torah, the mitzvahs at that point yet weren't obligatory. So at that point, people who were big tzaddikim, such as the Shvatim, they actually, it wasn't a problem for them to marry their sisters because they were taka on the level of Bria and the level of Atzilus, and they were actually able to replicate those yichudim and that yichud kuchabrichu shchinte over here in this world without having any adverse or negative reactions. Just another area where we see how understanding the deeper elements, and even if we don't fully understand them, at least being aware of the deeper elements of Pnimius HaTorah, of Kabbalah and Chassidus, it illuminates so many areas which otherwise are surprising. Why Taki aren't Arayis allowed, as the Ramban asks? And why were the Shvatim allowed to do that? But once you understand the Pnimius, deeper reason why Arayis aren't allowed, then we can understand why an exception was made for the Shvatim. And even though Taka, that all of Klal Yisrael, for all generations, we come, Taka, from those unions, not only is it not a problem, to the contrary, that was a way of bringing down a tremendous oir into this world. Okay. Next week in Mirz Hashem, we will finish off Siman Gimel, not too much longer, and then next week also we will start Mirz Hashem Siman Dal. Yeah.